If you haven't seen the previous video, please do see it first because this is history and it needs to be told patiently. So, welcome back to this trip. On the other hand, internal fights, persecution by Romans, and the emergence of Arab Muslim kingdoms weakened the Patriarchate of Antioch, which was so caught up with its problems that there was little time to oversee the administrative affairs of a far-off Indian church. Vasco da Gama ushered in the power and leadership of the Pope backed by the resources and authority of the Portuguese king. Once the sea route was established, missionaries from Portugal began to arrive along with traders who started evangelizing in the region, attracting the poor and the underprivileged. The number of new converts continued to grow, much to the annoyance of the Nazranis. By this time, caste and class were introduced into the region. Remember the Brahmin theory? The Nazranis called themselves as high caste and ignored the ones that came outside high caste. The caste system, which had entered the common person's vocabulary, came in handy to establish one's supremacy. But the Portuguese showed scant respect for caste and welcomed everyone to the faith, though a lot of violent force was involved too. This is why a large number of people from the so-called outcast communities converted to Christianity in the 15th and 16th century. The self-proclaimed high caste Nazranis opposed this, putting the Portuguese in a catch-22 situation. They could not afford to antagonize their trading partners while also carrying out conversions with missionary zeal. They decided to lay low, though evangelization continued clandestinely. Their attempt to bring the Nazranis under the Latin Church, headed by the Pope in Rome, was also in progress, but it was a tough task to completely end the influence of the Middle East. Thus began forceful conversions by the Portuguese missionaries of those who were following the Syrian liturgy. This precisely means they converted even those who were already Christians. Keep in mind that by this time Goa was captured by the Portuguese and Jesuit missionaries had started working there. Alexis de Menezes, who was the Archbishop of Goa from 1595 to 1617, wanted the Nazranis to come under the ambit of the Pope. They set out to make this mission happen. Influenced by the Inquisition in Europe, the Archbishop and the Portuguese colonizers called for the Synod in Diamper in 1599. Now you know the importance of the place where we started this trip. From here on, you will know the importance of the place where we will end this trip. At this synod, a set of rules were formulated, and the Nazranis were declared a part of the Latin Catholic Church, with the Pope as its supreme leader. To implement this, they took the help of the King of Cochin, who was subservient to the Portuguese. Those who opposed this were threatened with property seizure and other harsh punishments. The chief priest, who was the administrative head of the group of priests in Kerala, was forced under duress to accept the synod ruling. This synod ruling was not acceptable to a majority of Nazranis, as they felt betrayed. They had survived and thrived without any supreme spiritual leader, and would have wanted to maintain the status quo. No, the main reasons for their opposition were something else. The synod asked them to discontinue several of their traditional customs and lived systems, which the Portuguese considered local or animist or paganism and superstitious. They also refused to accept new customs and leadership of the Latin Church. If you are aware of the quarrels that is being fought today over the Mass tradition, you can relate to this. The military might of the Portuguese ensured no Nazrani could get in touch with the Patriarchate of Chaldeans. Not only was communication completely cut off, but when Mar Ahatala, a bishop of the Syriac Rite, landed in Mylapore, he was immediately arrested and deported. For more than half a century, 52 years to be precise, the Nazranis resisted the Portuguese and suffered under them to sustain their indigenous customs and Christian faith. Fed up, the Nazranis revolted against the Portuguese on 3rd of January 1653 and took an oath publicly that they would not submit to Latin Catholic-Portuguese dominance. This oath later came to be known as Bent Cross Oath. In a few minutes, we will end this trip at the very same place where this oath was taken and how the cross was bent. So on the day of this oath, which was 3rd of January 1653, only a handful of Nazranis gathered there and later sided with the Portuguese missionaries. The rest, it is believed, went to a church at Mattancheri to take oath. They held onto a rope that was tied to a cross while the oath was administered. The cross slanted due to the pole giving the oath its famous name. It is now almost 600 years since it happened, and you will appreciate how they must have reached here, since there were no roads or bridges to travel. Anyway, this historic oath broke off Nazranis practically into two factions, those opposed to and those, even if quietly, with the Portuguese. In contemporary Kerala, we find these two groups further split into at least 8 different groups, claiming ancestry to either the ancient Nazranis or St. Thomas Christians of Malabar. The rebel group broke off and declared itself as part of a separate church. It came to be called the Mattancheri Church. The new group was without a bishop, as the Portuguese, who had absolute dominance over the Arabian Sea, continued to block bishops from Arabia or Turkey. Thus, the group decided to ordain a bishop from among themselves independent of the Portuguese. A large number of their people gathered along with senior priests and community leaders at Yedapali on May 22, 1653, and 12 senior priests among them ordained their spiritual leader, who came to be called Mar Thoma I, the supreme head of Kerala Nazrani Christians. Portuguese, of course, declared this illegal and said the ordination was invalid, as the bishop was not ordained by another bishop. Those who remained independent today are known as Malankara Orthodox Church, under whose jurisdiction this Bent Cross Church stands. There is another shrine nearby which is also called with the same name, but this is not the one as name suggests.